A 19th century fur trader tries to survive a cold winter while being tormented by hundreds of beavers. You could probably spin the description of this movie to sound an awful lot like the Leonardo DiCaprio movie The Revenant, which is a much darker and dramatic and raw movie. But it is nothing like The Revenant. In fact, it is nothing like any movie that I think I've ever watched. On top of being a 19th century period piece, it's in black and white and almost completely free of dialogue. There are a few words spoken every now and then, but they are not needed to follow the story, what little story there is. That is because Hundreds of Beavers is basically just a live-action Looney Tunes cartoon. The look and feel of this movie would feel right at home in the 1920s, alongside Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin slapstick comedy movies. After listening to an interview with the filmmaker, it seems he was heavily influenced by those silent-era comedies and realized that both Buster Keaton and Super Mario Bros. Video games have very similar camera framing techniques. Most of the shots in these movies and in those video games just show the protagonist and the obstacle that is directly in front of them, nothing else. So on top of the silent-era movie influences, there are a lot of video game influences in Hundreds of Beavers as well. It's not things that non-gamers are going to be turned off by, it's just a little bit of extra Easter egg content for those people who are gamers. I watched the trailer for Hundreds of Beavers before I watched the movie, which is something I don't normally do, and honestly I thought it looked really stupid. And then I watched the movie anyway, and it was really stupid, but I could not look away from it. I didn't even want to blink for fear that I'd miss a joke that was so stupid but also really smart and really clever. There are so many visual gags in this movie. And the animation is also clever and creative, but it's also super low quality, but in the best possible way. And I've made a lot of videos in my life, and sometimes I have a great idea for a visual gag that I know I'm capable of pulling off. But I usually end up talking myself out of it because the number of hours it would take me to get the visual gag just right, and it just isn't worth it for the payoff of a joke. So instead of trying, I just convince myself that it's not worth it. And this reminds me a lot of the Mitch Hedberg joke. If I think of a joke and the pen and paper to write it down are too far away, I just have to convince myself that that joke ain't funny. The creators of Hundreds of Beavers brought to life every single joke and spent literally 4 years to create those visual gags, and they mostly paid off. The movie is so surreal and absurd. The beavers, the rabbits, the horses, they're all just men in costumes, and the costumes look like generic mascot costumes, or like they could have come off a shelf at a Spirit Halloween, and it takes nothing away from the movie. The goofy costumes just add to the charm. Hundreds of Beavers is almost family friendly, and in some ways it's a lot more family friendly than Looney Tunes cartoons, because those characters are constantly getting shot in the face with shotguns. In Hundreds of Beavers there is a short 30-second or so scene of a woman doing a pole dance. It's not played to be sexy, it's played for laughs. And then there are a couple of scenes where a snowman might have an extra piece of anatomy. But other than those two little things, this movie is completely family friendly, and kids are guaranteed to laugh throughout the whole thing. And because there's no dialogue, the jokes are 100% visual, and even though the movie seems way too long at 1 hour and 45 minutes for a movie with this concept, it somehow never gets boring. A lot of the jokes repeat multiple times throughout the movie, but there's always a little twist on the joke to make it fresh once again. The creativity of the filmmakers is completely off the charts. And the only movie creatively that's even in the same league as Hundreds of Beavers is Dave Made a Maze, where all of the sets and special effects were made with just cardboard boxes. Now, with so many options to steal our attention, it's going to be hard for the filmmakers and the marketing companies to convince audiences to watch a black and white period piece with no dialogue. But I can tell you that if you grew up watching Looney Tunes cartoons, this movie is well worth your time. It is so dumb and absurd and over the top and pointless, and even though I didn't find myself laughing out loud nearly as much as I wanted to or thought that I would, I cannot quit thinking about the movie since it ended, and I keep replaying some of the scenes over and over in my head. Watching the trailer does not do the movie justice. You really need to see these jokes in the context of the movie for them to work as intended. Hundreds of Beavers is way out there, and it's way different than anything else that you're probably currently watching, but I can guarantee it's gonna make you laugh, and it is, without a doubt, a creative masterpiece. Being really cold, bowling for rabbits, old-timey beer bongs, overly complex maps, spotting 2 rabbits in the woods, watching beavers work.